The Girl Who Painted Dreams. There lived a girl named Amara, a girl whose fingers carried magic, though the village around her was too busy struggling to notice. Amara's father died when she was 9. Her mother followed 2 years later, worn down by sickness and grief. With no one left to raise her, the elders of the family made a decision. Amara would go and live with her father's younger brother, Uncle Bassi, in the next village. Uncle Bassi was not a cruel man, not exactly. He was a tired man, a man who sold cement and roofing sheets from a small shop by the roadside, who had 3 mouths of his own to feed, and who had never asked to inherit a 4th. His wife, Auntie Patience, made the arrangements clear from Amara's first night under the roof. "You will eat what we eat, you will sleep where there is space, but understand this," she said, arms folded, eyes hard. "This house is not a charity home. You will work for your place here." Amara's nodded, because what else could a 10-year-old girl do but nod? She fetched water before sunrise. She swept the compound until the red dust rose like smoke. She carried baskets to the market on her head, balanced and silent, while other children her age walked past in school uniforms, laughing about things she could no longer remember how to laugh about. But there was one thing Auntie Patient and Uncle Bassi did not know about Amara. She could paint. It started with charcoal. Behind the house, near the rubbish heap where Uncle Bassi's shop discarded broken roofing sheets and empty cement bags, Amara found a piece of plywood that the rain had warped. She picked it up out of curiosity, turning it over in her hands, and something about its smooth, blank surface made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand. That night, with a stick of burnt firewood, she drew her mother's face on it. Not perfectly, not even well, not at first, but it was there and it was hers, and for the first time since the funeral, Amara felt something other than emptiness. After that, she couldn't stop. She used charcoal for shadows, she crushed hibiscus petals and mixed them with water for red. She boiled leaves from the bitter leaf bush until they turned a deep earthy green. She scraped rust from old tin cans behind the shop and mixed it with palm oil to make a strange burnt orange that she loved more than any color she'd ever seen. Scrap wood became her canvas, old flour sacks, torn and bleached pale by sun and washing, became her cloth. She painted in the hour before dawn, when the compound was still and quiet, and she hid every finished piece beneath a loose plank under her sleeping mat. Market women, children playing 10-10 in the dust, the old mango tree that split the sky behind the house, a bird mid-flight, wings spread so wide it looked like it would tear itself out of the wood and into the real sky above. She was good. Anyone with eyes could see it, but no one had looked yet. Her cousin Ruthie was the one who found the paintings first. Ruthie was Auntie Patience's only daughter, 14, and used to being the prettiest, loudest, most admired girl in any room she entered. She had new sandals every dry season and a mother who called her "my jewel" in front of visitors. She did not like sharing attention. She especially did not like sharing it with a cousin who had arrived with nothing but a small bag and sad eyes. It was a Saturday morning that Ruthie, searching under Amara's mat for a missing hair ribbon she suspected Amara had taken, found the loose plank instead. She pulled it up and stared. Painting after painting, dozens of them, stacked carefully, wrapped in old newspaper to protect them from damp. Ruthie did not call Amara names that morning. She didn't laugh, not yet. She simply stared a long moment, too long, something unreadable behind her eyes, before she put the plank back exactly as she found it and said nothing. 3 days later, the cruelty began. "I heard you've been wasting good firewood charcoal on nonsense pictures, drawing rubbish on rubbish wood, as if that is what will pay your way through this house." Amara's stomach dropped. "How do you know about—" "Everybody will know soon," Ruthie said sweetly, and walked away smiling. She was not lying. The following week was the village's harvest market day, when traders came from 3 surrounding towns to sell, and the whole community gathered to celebrate the end of planting season with food, music, and a small open display where local children showed schoolwork, crafts, anything worth being proud of. Amara had never been allowed to bring anything before. She had never been asked. But that year, without telling her, Ruthie walked into the compound that morning carrying 3 of Amara's paintings, the ones of the mango tree, the market women, and the bird in flight, and set them up on a table at the display ground. For a breathless moment, Amara thought, foolishly, that her cousin was being kind. Then Ruthie raised her voice to the gathering crowd. "Come and see what my cousin has been hiding under her sleeping mat. Look at this nonsense she calls art. She uses our firewood, our oil, our cloth for this." Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Children leaned in, pointing, giggling at the strange colors, the uneven lines, the bold, unconventional colors that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. Auntie Patience arrived at the display table just as the laughter peaked, and her face went through several colors before settling on fury. She did not defend Amara. She didn't even look at her. She simply grabbed the 3 paintings off the table, marched home holding them away from her body like something diseased, and threw them on the rubbish heap behind the house. "This ends today," she said when Amara came running, breathless and crying. "I am not raising an artist. I am raising a girl who will survive. Paint will not put food in your stomach. Paint will not pay your school fees. From today, if I see one more charcoal mark in this house, I will burn that mat you sleep on and everything under it." That night, Amara did not paint. She lay on her mat, dry-eyed because she had no tears left, and listened to the wind move through the mango tree outside, the same one she had captured so carefully on a piece of warped plywood that was now sitting in the rubbish heap, slowly being rained on. She believed in that moment that her gift had died with the laughter of the crowd. She was wrong. There was one person at the market display that morning who had not laughed. His name was Mr. Effiong, a retired school teacher who now ran a small stationery store near the village square, selling notebooks, pens, and chalk to the local primary school. He had stood at the edge of the crowd that day, saying nothing while the others mocked, his eyes moving slowly and carefully over each of the 3 paintings. He saw what the others didn't. The way Amara had captured movement in the bird's wings using nothing but layered shades of one crushed leaf. The way the market women's painting held real weight and worry in their shoulders. The kind of detail you couldn't fake, the kind that came from someone who had actually carried baskets on her own head and understood exactly how tired a body made that. Mr. Effiong had spent 30 years teaching children to read and write, and he knew, with the kind of certainty that comes from decades of watching young minds, that he was looking at real talent, untrained, unrefined, but real. He did not say anything to the crowd that day. Embarrassing Auntie Patience publicly would only make things worse for the girl. He understood that much. Instead, he quietly approached the rubbish heap 2 days later while the family was in church and retrieved what remained of the 3 discarded paintings. Rain had damaged them, the colors bleeding and smudged at the edges, but 2 were still mostly intact. He had heard from a cousin who taught in the regional capital about a competition. The Eastern Region Foundation for the Arts ran an annual Young Artist Showcase open to children under 16 from anywhere in the region, no formal art training required. The prize was a full scholarship to a residential art academy in the capital, materials provided, tuition covered, a future most village children could never dream of touching. Entries closed in 3 weeks. Mr. Effiong posted the entry himself and went back to selling notebooks, saying nothing to anyone. The weeks that followed were the hardest of Amara's life. True to her word, Auntie Patient watched her closely. No charcoal, no scraps of cloth lingering too long in her hands. Amara's days filled with chores, more of them than before, as though physical exhaustion alone could scrub the artist out of her. She stopped sneaking behind the house before dawn. She stopped collecting rust and crushed petals. Something inside her, the part that used to ache with the need to create, went quiet, like a fire that had been doused but still smoked faintly under the ash. Ruthie, satisfied that she had finally put her cousin in her place, grew bored of teasing her and moved on to other things. Life in its dull and heavy way simply continued.
Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, a motorbike pulled into the village square carrying a man in a clean white shirt, the kind of shirt that marked him immediately as someone from the city. He asked the children playing nearby for directions to the house of a girl named Amara, an orphan living with relatives who had recently entered a regional arts competition. Word moved through the village faster than the motorbike itself. By the time the man reached Uncle Basi's compound, half the street had gathered behind him, whispering, craning their necks, certain that something important or scandalous was about to happen. Auntie Patience came out, wiping her hands on her wrapper, confused and immediately defensive. What has she done? What is this about? The man smiled and introduced himself as a coordinator from the Eastern Region Foundation for the Arts. He explained that an entry submitted under Amara's name, 2 paintings on damaged plywood, had been selected from over 400 submissions across the region as one of the top 3 finalists. The judges had been particularly struck, he said, by the originality of her color work and the emotional honesty in her brushstrokes, qualities they rarely saw even in trained young artists, let alone a self-taught village child. There would be a final showcase in the regional capital in 2 weeks, where the 3 finalists would present new work before a panel of judges and an audience of patrons, journalists, and arts educators. The winner would receive the full scholarship. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then, Auntie Patience turned to find Amara standing frozen in the doorway, and for the first time since she had arrived in that house 2 years earlier, the older woman did not know what to say at all. I didn't submit anything, Amara said quietly, once the coordinator had gone and the crowd had finally dispersed, still buzzing with gossip that would reach every corner of the village by nightfall. It was Mr. Effiong, arriving at the compound that evening with his walking stick and his quiet, unhurried manner, who finally explained. I saw what you made, he told her simply, sitting on the bench outside, while Auntie Patience hovered nearby, unusually silent. I saw them on market day. While everyone else was laughing, I was looking. There's a difference between the two, you know, laughing and looking. He told her about retrieving the paintings from the rubbish heap, about photographing them, about the letter he wrote describing a girl who turned discarded wood and crushed leaves into something that made a tired old teacher's chest tighten with feeling he hadn't expected. I should have asked you first, he admitted, but I was afraid that if I asked, fear would answer instead of you. Fear is very good at saying no on behalf of people who would have said yes if only they believed in themselves enough. Auntie Patience said nothing for a long while. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its usual hardness. You threw away 2 years' worth of charcoal and oil and torn cloth from this house to make something a stranger from the city says is worth a scholarship? Yes, Auntie, Amara said carefully, unsure if a storm or something else entirely was coming. Auntie Patience looked at the 2 surviving paintings, water-damaged and smudged, that Mr. Effiong had brought with him to return. She looked at them for a long time. I threw them on the rubbish heap, she finally said, so quietly it was almost to herself. I threw them on the rubbish heap, and they still won. The showcase was held in a proper exhibition hall in the regional capital, a building grander than anything Amara had ever stood inside. Polished floors, bright lights, walls hung with framed work from the other 2 finalists, both from city schools with real art teachers and real paint that came from real shops, not crushed leaves and rusted tin. Amara stood beside her newest piece, painted in the 2 weeks leading up to the showcase, on a clean board Mr. Effiong had bought her himself, the first brand new canvas she had ever owned. She had painted the mango tree behind Uncle Basi's house, the same one from the original piece Ruthie had once mocked, but transformed now, its branches reaching wide and high, dotted with small dark shapes that, if you looked closely, were birds mid-flight, all of them rising upward, away from the ground, toward an open and endless sky. She titled it simply, What Was Almost Thrown Away. The judges asked her questions about her technique, about where her colors came from, and she answered honestly, plainly, about hibiscus kettles and bitter leaves and rust scraped from tin cans, about painting in the dark hour before dawn so no one would see and tell her to stop. A hush moved through the room. Several patrons exchanged glances. One judge, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, wiped quickly at her eyes and pretended she hadn't. When the results were announced that evening, Amara's name was called first. Amara returned to the village 2 weeks later with a scholarship letter in her bag and a future that no longer looked like the one she had been quietly mourning beneath a loose floor plank. Ruthie did not apologize, not exactly, not in words, but something shifted in the way she looked at her cousin afterwards. A quiet, grudging recognition that had not existed before. Auntie Patience never became a warm woman overnight. People rarely changed that completely, that quickly. But she kept the original 2 water-damaged paintings, framed cheaply but carefully, hanging on the wall of the front room where every visitor to the house could see them. And when neighbors asked about the girl who had gone away to study art in the capital, Auntie Patience answered every time with the same 4 words, said a little louder than necessary, a little prouder than she likely intended. That is my daughter. Amara never forgot the rubbish heap behind that house, or the hour before dawn, or the crowd that laughed at colors they didn't understand. She kept them, in their own way, the same way she kept every memory that had ever tried to convince her she wasn't enough. She simply painted over them, layer by layer, until something beautiful remained. The end.